Welcome to our first ever Ratanak Ride webcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Dylla, and I'm the host for the first part of this one-hour session. We're glad to have riders joining us on this call from locations right across Canada and the United States. We have 21 teams in Canada in Moncton, Ottawa, Toronto, Waterloo, Winnipeg, Kelowna, Langley, and here in Vancouver. And south of the border, we're actually excited, and really excited, to have brand new teams in New York City, Chicago, Elgin, Nebraska, Los Angeles, and Seattle. Welcome aboard, Ratanak USA. Brian McConaghy and I have a lot of ground to cover in the 1 hour we have. So let me go over the agenda and some housekeeping rules. I'll spend the next 10 minutes covering ride essentials. Brian will take half an hour to update you on Ratanak and the projects that will break the cycles of vulnerability and exploitation. And we'll finish off with 20 minutes of questions and answers. You'll be able to submit your questions using Google Hangout question window. We have Kara and Joy of our communications team on standby to receive your questions. We do ask that you wait until the question period to submit your questions, as the answers may come up in our presentation. We'll respond to as many questions as we can, and the rest will be answered by email over the next couple of days. So let me start off with the Ride for Refuge. And I want to thank you all for supporting the work God is doing in Cambodia through Ratanak, and for being one of the 400 riders who will help us reach our 2014 fundraising target of $115,000. This is our 5th year that we've partnered with the Ride for Refuge organization. We joined our first ride in 2010, just 4 weeks before the October ride dates. We had 16 teams, 121 riders, and raised just over $36,000. We also caught the attention and imagination of the Ride for Refuge organization. In each of the 3 past years, God has blessed us with over 40 teams, more than 300 riders, and over $110,000 in donations. We've had amazing support and encouragement from Brian Carney and his Ride for Refuge organization. We really couldn't run an event of this magnitude without their expertise and hard work. So Brian, if you're watching this, we love you guys. For us, the ride is more than just a fundraising event. It's a way to connect with people who share our passion about the issues affecting Cambodians, and a way to empower you to make tangible differences in their lives, to help you become an agent of change. It's also a great entry point into the larger Ratanak community of volunteers, where you can serve in various capacities to help us continue the work we are doing in Cambodia. Let me just... Give me a sec here, and there we go. So the first step, if you haven't already done so, is to join us on the ride. You can start a new team and recruit your friends to join you, or you can also join an existing team. If you are new to the ride, you'll need to set up a ride account. This will allow you to register as a rider or team captain, customize your personal fundraising page, and process all donations. A couple of things to be aware of when you're registering. And this is important because some people choose the wrong option. First of all, there are 2 options. You can either pay the $25 to register, or you can bypass the registration fee and be a fundraiser. And of course, we want you to select option number 2 to be a fundraiser of a minimum of $150, or for youth, it's a minimum of $75. And we don't see these minimums as a big barrier. Most people will raise way more. To note, the registration fee cannot be refunded, and it's not eligible for tax receipts. So once you've paid it, you're really out of luck in some ways. So we just want to make sure that you pick the right option. Additionally, when you register, there are certain checkpoints that check marks we want you to check off. If you don't check them off, we won't be able to see your names. We won't get your email address, and consequently, we won't be able to speak with you and to communicate with you. Yeah, sorry, we're having technical difficulties. And there we go. It's full screen now. One moment, please. They're working there? In any case, I'll continue on. So we want to make sure that you do check the boxes off on the way through. Now, once you've completed the registration, you get onto your fundraising page. And this is the web page that you will have that people will go to actually do donations. Now, people can donate by cash or check, but the best way to do it is get them, if they can, to donate by credit card. This means that not only will the funds be attributed to us right away, but there's less management of funds administration and also less work for you to do. And when you get to this page, you'll see a personal message. And it's important to customize your message. One of the things we've discovered over the years is that the people who have raised the most and have received most donations typically have taken the time to personalize their page, both the website and their email appeals that they will send out. As you can see by this page, the message, personal message, is very generic. It's one that's set up by the Ride for Refuge organization. And it's, do I continue on or do I continue talking? And it's quite generic. It's way, pardon me?
Don't full screen it.
Don't full screen it. Okay, so I'm not going to full screen it. It's my, now, a much better personal web page is the one that Colleen Dennehy put up. She's the captain of our team, and if you notice, she's got a picture up of herself. She's also included, you can put up to 6 pictures or videos on your page, and her message is quite clear. I mean, she's taken some time to express who she is, why she's involved, what the issues are, what could be done about it, and putting in an appeal. So I'd encourage you to think about this, and also go to the Ratanak webpage, the RIDE webpage, and scroll through some of the teams and see what type of messages they put up and how successful they are. And you can, by going on the Ride for Refuge portal, you can actually learn how to use the fundraising portal, which includes hints on customizing your web page. And then once you've got your web page completed, next step is actually approaching your donors. Most people will send out emails. The Ride for Refuge organization has set up a website over here that you can actually use to get donors. Again, if you look at the message, it's very generic. It's geared to sort of highlight what the Ride for Refuge is looking for, and includes a little link to your specific website. It's much more effective if you actually create your own message and talk about Ratanak, what Ratanak means to you. And so let me just go take a little segue over here and explain my first experience. In 2010, it was my first time fundraising. I'd never done it before, and so I thought, okay, what is the issue that's really burning my heart, and why I feel it's necessary not only to raise funds but to raise awareness to help certain people. At the time, we were doing child exploitation, so I gave a few facts about what the situation is in Cambodia, what's happening to young girls, how often they're victimized, what happens to them, their state, psychological, physical, spiritual state after they're rescued. Also mention how much it costs, and put an appeal out there to say, I'd like to be able to raise enough money to provide the rehabilitation services for 1 year for one girl. And that seemed to resonate with a lot of people I was sending to. They could understand the issue. They could understand the personalized side of not only what I'm trying to do, but also the impact on the girl, the changed life that she will have as a result of the fundraising. So that's my story, and I sent my emails out, and within an hour I had a $1,000 target. Within an hour I had to raise that target because I already had raised or had received donations of over $800. And that year alone, I received over $3,500 worth of donations. So a very good scripted message makes all the difference. So just Joy, can you stop sharing and can't see? I don't see myself, so I'll assume I'm on screen.
Yeah, you're on screen.
Okay, so I am on screen. So I'll just finish off. Again, you know, a key aspect over here is really make it personal. Take the time to personalize your appeal letter and web page with a compelling and an engaging message. Help your donors relate to the issues and understand the personal cost of the exploited. Clearly state what it'll take to make a change, how much it costs, if you know that, and appeal to them in joining you to make a tangible difference in the life of one person in Cambodia. And lastly, don't forget to send out a reminder page, a reminder letter. Just something simple saying, a couple of weeks ago I sent you this appeal letter. Not sure if you had a chance to consider it, but if you would like to donate, please do so now. I receive about 10% of my overall donations every year as a result of my reminder. So now you're asking yourselves, okay, so I know that the logistics, the mechanics of logging on, of signing in, of registering, of putting together an appeal message, customizing my website, but I'm not familiar enough with what the issues are. And this is why we've got Brian McConaghy coming on next. Brian's going to spend the next 30 minutes sharing about the issues of Cambodia, sharing about what the projects are that will actually break the cycles of vulnerability and exploitation. So without any delay, I'll pass you on to Brian.
Hi everybody. Once again, I can't see myself on screen, so I'm assuming I'm on screen here. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for participating in Ride for Refuge. It is, it's an amazing opportunity to actually bring change to lives that otherwise would have very, very little hope. What I'm going to do is walk you through a little bit of the history of Cambodia, as well as some of the modern issues. It's really important we have a sense that this is not just an event. There's plenty of fundraising events out there, but what I like to do is to really have cause and effect together so that you have a sense of doing something real with real lives. This is not theoretical by any means what we're doing. So by way of background for Ratanak, some of you may not be familiar with Ratanak and what it is. Ratanak is an unusual name. It's simply the name of a little girl who died in 1989, and I found out about her after she was dead. I watched her die on a TV show, and I was so struck by the circumstances of her death that I figured I'm going to go in and try and help other children in her circumstances. I can't help her, but I'll do it in her memory, and so I named Ratanak after her. And I actually never planned a charity. It just kind of it came into being when people saw what I was doing, and they would consistently tell me, "You're absolutely nuts, but this works. Here's some money. Go do it again." And a charity was born. So it's always a challenge as we have the opportunity to work with more and more lives in Cambodia to keep that grassroots sense that we're really impacting real lives, and what we're doing is not theoretical. So what I'm going to do is walk you through that history so you have a sense of why Cambodia. There's numerous things on the news that are crying out for attention. So why is Cambodia so critical, and why is it really on my heart? And what I'm going to do is start up a PowerPoint and just walk you through that visually. I think we learn better visually, so that's what we'll do, and hopefully this will come up. Is that up, everybody? Can I have a signal from someone? I am a techno peasant, I will tell you right now. We're okay? We're on? Okay, so Cambodia itself, this picture I just used to illustrate the fact that it's a beautiful historic nation. This is simply the gate of one of the main ruins in the Angkor Wat area, going into what they call the Bayon. And this is just a small precursor to what you see when you visit. And it's really is it not up yet? Oh, it is up. Okay. And so this is an illustration of the grand history Cambodia has. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to visit as a tourist, but there's so much we don't recognize when we go in as tourists as to what's happening underneath the surface. It's a country with great traditions and art. It's just got a beautiful sort of a cosmopolitan way of marrying the cultures of countries around it. Vietnam on one side, Thailand on the other, and many of the things in both Vietnam and Cambodia actually come from the culture, the ancient Khmer Empire, which was massive and very influential. And so what you see now as Thai dancing, and most tourists are familiar with Thai dancing, is actually Khmer dancing. It was actually taken from the Khmer Royal Palace, I believe, in the 9th century. So there's tremendous history here, but there's much more depth associated with Cambodia. As a society, it is largely rural and has been. That is changing somewhat, but it's still largely rural. And you go into these lovely little picturesque villages where people are sitting around in hammocks. They work very hard doing the rice harvest, but you kind of don't see that a lot of times. And it looks very relaxing and very nice, but there's a lot of poverty and a lot of issues with those families that go back to its recent history, and I'll get into that very shortly. The other side of society is the urban population, which is kind of the opposite. It's frenzied, it's chaotic, and a lot of times the cities and the urban population are viewed by the rural population as those who consume the wealth of the country. And clearly for many, not all, but for many, the standard of living is higher in the cities. And that disparity, while it exists today, also exists or existed in the 1960s during the Vietnam War. And what it led to was a lot of angst in terms of the rural population as to the kind of consumerism and the materialism of the cities. That played right into the hands of the communism that was rife in North Vietnam at the time and spreading into rural districts of Cambodia. And so a civil war took place side by side with the Vietnam War, actually not part of the Vietnam War per se, but side by side. And ultimately the communists did take over. And these guys were easily the world's most radical communists. When they took over Phnom Penh City, this is a picture of the boy soldiers marching into Phnom Penh on April 17th, 1975, and many of them had not seen multi-story buildings. They had no knowledge of city life. They had been fighting in the jungles, so their families were dead or they'd been separated from their families. And these guys were ruthless, absolutely ruthless. The city of Phnom Penh at that time, the capital, had 2.5 million people in it, and they nervously greeted their new victors in the hopes that life would be. They knew it was going to be tough under the communists, but they didn't realize it was going to be this tough, and they actually hoped it was going to get better than what the Civil War had been. Tragically, that was not to be true. The Khmer Rouge, upon taking over, just instituted radical reforms. The first one was get out of the city. And this was to happen to every city, every town, every village in the country, where everyone was ordered out at gunpoint. And a huge amount of social dislocation happened. Family members were separated. If you didn't walk fast enough, you would simply be killed. And this was kind of the opening bid in almost a 4-year revolution that would absolutely destroy the country. So people like you and I, with comforts, and the city dwellers who basically had the world at their feet, suddenly found themselves being marched out and being told to obey the revolution and forget everything that was past. And they called this Year Zero. That left the cities completely abandoned for 3 years, 10 months. And this is the only time in modern history this has happened. Every single person in the country became a displaced refugee, and they were forced into slave labor doing these big earthen dams to increase rice harvest, although they failed in that regard because the engineers who would have designed those irrigation programs were all killed. anybody with an education more than grade 3 was slated for education if they chose, and they did on the vast majority of occasions execute anyone that spoke a foreign language, wore glasses, and therefore could read, had soft hands from the cities, and on it went. So you end up with the entire upper educated strata of society being executed or worked to death in these work camps. This is the only time in modern history where we have an entire country being turned into a concentration camp. Nothing really approaches this in terms of percentage death either. The population at that time was 7.5 million people, and the death toll, the international media is currently quoting as 2 million. However, some of the mathematical models, in fact the good mathematical models that are coming out now, are pointing towards 3.2 million being killed. So the percentage of death and dislocation in this society is absolutely profound. And we don't have a good understanding of that, but it's something that we need to come to terms with if we're to understand the psychology of present-day Cambodia. There's a reason why we're working there. There's a reason why so many go to try and help Cambodians. It's really difficult to build a country when all the infrastructure is gone. And when I say that, I mean all the infrastructure and anybody who knew how to build infrastructure. If you're building a hospital in other countries in the developing world, you will still have local engineers, electricians, architects. They may need a little money, a little help, a little encouragement from international non-government organizations and charities, but basically a lot of what they need is in the country. This is not true for Cambodia. Cambodia had all that eradicated in the late 1970s. And this tragically was followed by isolation. One of the things I should point out here in this revolution is that one of the things they dismantled in society, they dismantled every structure, but one of the keys that they dismantled was the family. And they systematically separated children from parents, and they raised the children on a regime of violence and brutality. Those children are now the adults of Cambodian society. And they did not have regular models of parenting. They grew up in a genocidal environment across the board, right across society. And so you can imagine we have major, major issues in terms of how Cambodian society is today. One of those being the number of kids that live on the streets. Many of them have left homes because their parents have died of AIDS and they've got nowhere to stay. But also many run away from parents or step-parents because of the level of brutality at home. These kids are brutalized because their parents were raised on violence themselves. And so it shouldn't be a surprise to us that we have massive issues with domestic violence. So after all that is sort of absorbed by this society, and it has taken blow after blow of trauma, you would think that when the revolution ends, the international community would rush in to help the way they are so apt to do in so many nations. Tragically, that was not the case in Cambodia. Cambodia, after the revolution, was subjected to 13 years of isolation. When a civil war raged, the Khmer Rouge, communist guerrillas, were not quite eradicated, and they were out on the Thai border, and they initiated a civil war against the new government. And so in isolation, the country then became the most landmined country in the world. And so there was no diplomatic relationships with that country of consequence. There were from a few communist governments in the East Bloc. No Western governments were there. No NGOs were working there. There was profound isolation, and Cambodia was just left to rot as a society while suffering from an extraordinary amount of civil war and fighting by the Khmer Rouge, who were trying to regain power, terrifying society, and planting mines everywhere. This photo is a picture of a few mines, literally a few, recovered in a populated area where kids play and live. These mines were recovered in a 72-hour period. Millions of these were planted through that civil war. None of them were logged or plotted. And so in this mess, you have one of the highest percentages of amputees in the world. And where are all the doctors? Well, they were executed in the revolution. There's no infrastructure. There's no ability to rebuild. And so one of the first things I got involved in was building clinics, where we could build clinics to provide some kind of basic rudimentary medical services where there were none. And it was very, very challenging because they didn't understand basic medicine. They'd been raised in complete ignorance through the killing fields. It was simply slave labor. That's all they knew. And so they were really challenged in terms of understanding the illnesses that they were encountering themselves. Massive amounts of malnutrition, because many of the the fields that they would have harvested to plant crops and to harvest, those had been mined and could no longer be cultivated, and so there were shortages of food. So in this environment, in partnership with others, I would participate in raising money, and then we'd build clinics. And others, primarily Christian Missionary Alliance, would send in tremendous medical teams to train locals on basic medicine to try and get that started again. As we did that, we would build the clinics, and the Khmer Rouge would roll in and destroy them. And so it was a very challenging environment. It was a very challenging environment to raise money in, to be frank. You know, you're running a charity, and you want people to commit their emotions and their hearts and realize they're really changing lives. And we would build clinics, and the Khmer Rouge would blow them up. But the wonderful thing I discovered as I went through the process of how much am I going to tell donors, how much am I going to tell people that have donated into this brand new clinic, should I be honest or should I just cover it up? Well, obviously the decision was made very early on. I've got to be upfront with people, and so I would tell people, remember that clinic that we've all worked really hard to raise $30,000 to build? Well, it's now shattered. And to my surprise and my joy, people didn't recoil from that. Generally speaking, people are tough. They don't have any trouble dealing with adversity as long as they understand what's going on. And so oftentimes people would say, well, last time I donated $100 to that clinic. Here's $200. You go rebuild that thing. And so we ended up with this emotional commitment where we had a donor base of a small group of donors who were tenacious. And what was actually happening was they were starting to bond with this society. They were starting to become part of the fight for justice for this country. And so that set the pace for me in terms of being absolutely upfront with projects. Many of our projects are tremendously successful. Many of them are challenged. We have had some failures, and people hear that upfront, and they understand that this is a developing world environment. Nothing's perfect, and we do our best. Having said that, we have been blessed with an incredible amount of success. So from the clinics, we moved on to immunization programs that were desperately needed, introducing ambulance programs for landmine victims. There were thousands of landmine victims that were coming in as society would try to rebuild, and they would try and cultivate fields desperate for food and constantly be encountering mines as they planted and harvested the rice. We also moved into community literacy programs because obviously there had been no education in the schools at all through the killing fields. We also, some years ago, participated in putting together the first library outside the capital. When the Khmer Rouge took over, they destroyed every library in the country, and they actually kept pigs in the National Library. The books that currently populate the National Library in Phnom Penh were gifted by the French government. Basically, the Cambodian books that survived had to be out of country. Everything in the country was destroyed, and that means everything. And so rebuilding the literary history of this country has been very challenging, and there are no libraries outside the capital. There are few in the capital, none outside, and we had the privilege of building the first library outside the capital city for rural kids. This particular building is surrounded by several schools and a total of 8,000 children that had never seen a library before. So that was exciting, as were in the same area projects involving irrigation, where families simply couldn't sustain rice harvests or keep their livestock alive because of changing weather conditions. And when you have agriculture destroyed that way, you have desperation. When you have desperation kick in an environment where the moral base has been significantly eroded and there's no education in terms of the value of human life, courtesy of the killing fields, then you have parents desperate enough to sell their children. And so even the education programs, the agricultural programs we do, all serve to stabilize society in the hopes of preventing children being sold and becoming slaves to the whims of others in society. So while we are known for child sex exploitation programs, there's much more going on because we have to move back into society and deal with foundational issues as preventative measures. And so that's what we're very much engaged in. We also work with the elderly. We have a wonderful safe house for elderly widows who are beggars, they have a very tough lot in life is an understatement, and this is a safe place for them to go at night after a day's begging where they can be nurtured and cared for, and they get a good meal, and they are the most delightful old ladies to work with. And those of our teams that have visited and staff that spend time with them, I can tell you they are every bit as cute as any kid in Cambodia. They are just wonderful old ladies and have suffered much. So we deal with that as well. No one has a monopoly on suffering anywhere, but particularly in Cambodia. It's all over the place. And so we try to deal compassionately with those who have suffered. The old ladies in that program have been through civil wars, multiple revolutions. Most of them have had their children killed. Some of them are trying to raise grandchildren by themselves, living on the street. It is a mess. And yet, as they live on the street and they beg, they try to help those in their family, and it's very inspiring to see their bravery as they do this. But it is such a joy to spend time with them and actually serve and bless them with some relaxation and safety in the evenings. And so there's a real emphasis on education, because education protects children. If children are educated, then they have an opportunity to move ahead in life with other jobs and are much less likely to be abused and used up in the sex trade or anything else. We've maintained medical programs, and so in addition to hospitals, we moved into full-blown hospitals. And this hospital was built up in a place called Poi Pet on the Thai-Cambodian border and services thousands of people in a highly mined area. And so we have a full surgical suite. The teams are not ours. Our job is to sort of provide the infrastructure, the ambulances, the stuff that the teams need. This team is also Christian Mission Alliance. The doctor facing the camera here is an ex-US Marine Corps doctor who is just an amazing man, who's perfectly suited to work in this kind of difficult environment. And it's wonderful to see people being given their lives back when they're taken off from the villages after mine injuries or domestic violence or whatever. And the ambulance program guys got the nickname from the villages called the Saving People, because they saved so many lives that people thought that guy's never going to survive when they were taken off in the ambulance. Sure enough, a couple of weeks later, they're back, they're alive, they're cared for, they've received good surgical care, and everybody was shocked. And so we have a reputation, and these programs became known as the Saving People, which I think is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful name for Christians who are trying to serve in some pretty desperate circumstances. When working with hospitals, we very quickly became aware of domestic violence. People would come into hospitals extremely beat up sometimes, and we realized that women were being beaten by their drunken husbands frequently. Many of the husbands had been soldiers. The war was over, so they were unemployed. They were bored. They had no income. So what little money they did have, they would spend on booze, and they would try and drown their sorrows and their hopelessness in life, and they would take out their frustrations on family members. And that was very much standard. And so we introduced a program of domestic violence training in the hospitals to teach families that it's actually not normal, or it shouldn't be, to be beaten to a pulp by family members. And in encountering those domestic circumstances, we very quickly encountered the issue of child exploitation. Now, I knew it was out there, and I have to be frank with you, I did not want to engage in this. I didn't want to go there. I didn't feel emotionally equipped to deal with this. You like to feel that you've got some training and can cope with some of this stuff. Nobody has training to cope with the depravity we see in the child brothels in Cambodia. And so I, to be honest, avoided that until I was assigned to file in Canada, and my full-time job, I was still full-time in the police in Canada and the RCMP, and I was assigned a file where a Canadian pedophile was abusing children, and he was videotaping his assaults on the children. And I was asked to view the videos to see if we could identify what country these children were in. Nothing, having done 2 decades of many, many homicide investigations, etc., nothing prepared me for what I saw in those tapes. It was absolutely heartbreaking, and so all those reservations I had about not getting involved in child sex violence stuff and projects and rehabilitation, the stuff really scared me. But all those reservations melted away when I saw these videos, and I saw 7 little girls staring back at me from a monitor, telling me in their eyes, "Help me, somebody help me." And so I committed myself to try and find those kids, and to make a very, very long story short, even though there was no particular evidence in the tapes of consequence, like street scenes and tourist shots, they were all just inside rape cubicles. As God would plan it, when we step up to the plate, oftentimes God does the heavy lifting, and I ended up with the GPS locations of those rape cubicles and the probable names of the kids in 72 hours. That miraculous series of events made me realize I've actually got something to offer here, and I can be used in helping such children. And so that caused Ratanak to enter into a whole new sphere of of projects involving abused children, rescue rehabilitation programs for them, safe houses, foster care programs, a lot of really difficult work for many years that we're still engaged in. And I'm still engaged in doing crime scene work. This is me doing a crime scene. I've got one that's currently operating where we're due to go to court fairly shortly. So this is still very active, and it's a really interesting kind of marriage of what you could describe almost as a regular Christian charity, but with this law enforcement child protection component that's in it because of the skill sets I have. And so this is me doing the CSI work, identifying a room forensically that would become reports that would lead to prosecution in Western courts. And so it is my privilege to still do that and protect children in that way. The work in the brothels just took off, and so as is our history, providing clinics and hospitals for NGOs that can staff them and run medical programs, so too with the brothels. And we provided a huge building in the center of the brothel district for another NGO that wanted to run child prevention, safety, education programs, and a medical program right in the middle of the child brothels. Very difficult environment to work in. This building was built by the Vietnamese mob as a child sex hotel. And to make a very, very long story short, it came up for sale, and they actually approached us and said, "You're our preferred customer," which is bizarre because we're the enemy in so many ways. But they did, and we did. We purchased it, and so it was a nerve-wracking thing to do a real estate deal with these guys. But we were able to buy the building at a very good price, and it was converted into a clinic, a church, and a school that thrives. And so we still own that building, from which 500 people a day receive help and services under very, very difficult circumstances. In that community, we're still doing the sort of the intelligence gathering work from a criminal investigation standpoint. This is the interior of a building that I'm currently working on right now. And so there's this wonderful mix of being able to help from all angles. And really, Ratanak is not a specific organization on one issue. It doesn't want to be. It wants to be an organization that is savvy, that knows what it's doing in Cambodia, and can tackle just about any situation because we've been at it a long time. So we're moving into our 25th year now. We kind of know what we're doing. The big thing that we're focusing on right now is not the little children. That trade is diminished because of a lot of international pressure, and it's not as public anymore. But there's things called KTVs popping up everywhere. KTVs are karaoke TV bars, which are basically fronts for prostitution, and they swallow up thousands of girls from the rural districts. And basically what happens here is the girls in the rural districts from these sleepy little villages are poverty-stricken. Their families need money, and so they jump on a truck and they come down to the capital city or other cities, and they seek employment in the factories, the large brand name factories, or the large factories that make the brand name products that you and I buy. And these are young women that have no understanding of modern society, and they're put in large dorms associated with factories, and they don't have any skills in the urban environment, and they're very, very vulnerable. And if you have a lot of guys in one dorm and a lot of girls in another, that's gonna turn bad, and it does. And so girls are frequently sexually abused. They're gang raped. They have no ability to tell their families back in the village how shaming it is what's happened to them in that culture. They can't do that, and so they're devastated. And so they come down to the factories to make the products that you and I buy, and they're frequently abused and used in that process. Their living conditions are poor. They live in dorms that are hovels in so many ways, and oftentimes paying extortionate rent for the little room, the little bunk they have, while being paid $60 a month, maybe $2 a day. And the food in the capital is so expensive, they're not going to make any headway there in terms of actual income. So it's kind of a downhill slide once you get swallowed up in this. You don't have enough money, especially if you've had problems with boys, and worse yet, if you're pregnant. My goodness, what a disaster for these girls. And so oftentimes, to make extra money from a variety of circumstances, they end up being approached and groomed and swallowed up in the sex industry. to make extra money and survive and try and send some money back to their family, all the while not telling their family what's going on. So they do this in secret, and the shame is profound. And so in a country that's poverty-stricken, we have large brothels like this one. This is actually a KTV bar. It's one of, there's thousands in the country now. Some of them have hundreds and hundreds of girls inside who service males, sometimes on the premises, sometimes off premises. But it's basically a massive industry of abuse. And so we're seeking ways to try and work with these older girls. Once the older girls have been used and abused too many times, they will no longer be healthy enough or good-looking enough in terms of injury or just looking pretty scabby because of whatever diseases they may pick up, and they'll get kicked out of the high-end KTVs, and they find themselves in backstreet poverty, turning tricks, doing whatever they can to survive in little brothel huts like these that are seedy to say the least. And you talk about a one-way trip. My goodness, this is not something you survive anytime soon. Our response to this has been to try to work with older girls post-rehabilitation. In this center, this is what we call the RAP Center, Ratanak Achievement Program, for girls that have suffered much in their past. And this is a safe location that's like a halfway house. They can reintegrate back into society with education, with counseling, being taught normal life skills. So this is one of the bedrooms just ready before we opened about a year and a half ago, this particular program. They sleep on mats. We want everything about this program to be culturally sensitive and normal in terms of the life they can expect. And so this is the bedroom awaiting them, and then here are the first crop of girls that arrived. Wonderful girls, some of them we had been tracking with for many years through rehabilitation, finally taking the frightening step back into society with us there to coach them and encourage them and bless them in that process. So in their app home, they learn budgeting, they learn food preparation, they learn all those normal human skills that kids here grow up with in their families and homes that these girls don't know, and so that we have to jumpstart that and basically prepare them for real life. In the evenings, they do their traditional dance practice, etc. And horror of all horrors, they have to do their own chores and laundry. They absolutely hate doing that. This includes yard work, but in a context of counseling. So they may do yard work and hate it, but we have counseling rooms in the RAP Center where they can go and they can discuss their day, they can discuss the education they're getting, they can discuss if they're upset with other girls in the home or upset with staff. I mean, these are late teenage girls, and you can imagine a house full of late teenage girls. It isn't always sweetness and light. I mean, we deal with many challenges, but the staff are good for it. I mean, they're trained and deal with it wonderfully. And so this is a home that has lots of activity. I have the privilege of visiting there and knowing the girls, and what an amazing thing it is to see their lives thriving and them coming back into real what you and I would consider real life. So 4 of these girls are currently in university. That's an amazing accomplishment, to go from the gutters of destruction really and sale to being in university. And one of them is currently studying IT systems in university, and I wish I had her here to help me know how to run this computer now and do these presentations. So it's wonderful to see them developing skill sets that are very much first world skill sets. So what is the overall picture here in terms of what we're trying to accomplish? Well, ultimately, we're trying to work with young women who have been treated like product, who have been abused horrendously, who have no concept of self-esteem, and we want to bring them through a variety of projects, not just the exploitation projects, but through education, through medical care so they're healthy, etc., etc. We want to see young boys and young girls become healthy, beautiful young people with skills to offer the world, with self-esteem that they can move forward. And this is precisely the job we're engaged in, and precisely the job we are privileged to see many, many successes in. So in that context, we have much to do still with the kids in the villages to protect them from being trafficked, and then to provide services to those who have been swallowed up by difficult circumstances. So there's a lot going on. So when you climb on a bike for Ride for Refuge, you are very definitely working for kids that are very real. Some of you who may have done Ride for Refuge before may remember a video they did a couple of years ago where the video they did showed everybody climbing on their bikes and getting hyped up and having fun and high-fiving and they're with families and friends, whatever, and it's all fun. And then as the video went on, it took you down a road, and they actually talked about this in the narration, where you ended up just by yourself on a bike. And that's really where the ride starts, where there's no more fanfare, it's just you on a bike, pedaling along, albeit with perhaps sore legs or you're cold, depending on where you are and what the weather's like, but it's you doing something meaningful, and it's you stepping out and saying, it's between me and these young people in Cambodia. That's why this is being done. So I can assure you in that process, it is a rich process. It leads to holistic care for many, many young people and even old people who desperately need help, and it absolutely changes lives. The cause, you guys on bikes, and the effect, change lives in Cambodia, are very close together, and we keep it that way. And so I would encourage you to think of those lives when you're involved with the ride, when you're cycling, when you're encouraging others to bike with you and join your team. This is real. And Ratanak is small enough and close enough to you that if you have questions, you can call, and we will tell you exactly what we're doing, what the projects we're involved in are, so that you have that sense of connectedness. We don't want to be some black hole into which you shovel money. We want you to partner with us in dealing with real lives, such as this little one. And with that, I'm going to try and switch over to the regular screen, and I have no idea how. I don't know where that went. Joy, can you show me where this is? It's what we did is we practiced a fair bit doing this, and of course when you practice, it ever looks the same when you go live. Everything sort of gets switched around. So anyway, thank you for bearing with us. I just want to encourage you in what you're doing. Even the admin project or the admin process that Paul was talking about in advance, you go on the website, you click on this, you sign on for that. Some of you that comes really naturally. Some of you it's a little more challenging. Please don't let that dissuade you. If you need help, Paul will be able to help you. You can contact us. Go through that, because there's lives waiting to be helped at the end of this. This is not an abstract process, and tragically we can't charge off and take you all to Cambodia and introduce you to these people, but I can assure you I get to meet them. I get to see those changed lives. I get to see absolutely transformed faces from absolute despair, old and young, to absolute joy, and it is a privilege to participate in this. So thank you for what you're doing, giving up your time and energy, particularly leveraging your relationships with friends to get friends to join, because we recognize and we know that you're leveraging the relationships you have, your reputation, your friendships on our behalf for the sake of Cambodians. We recognize that, we thank you for it, and we don't take it lightly. We will honor you in that, and the money that's received from A Ride for Refuge is huge for us. It changes many lives. It contributes to many, many programs. It is vital in our fundraising year, and you are very much front and center of that. So thank you and blessings on you as you continue this process with Paul, learning about Ride for Refuge, and ultimately the ride with us. So thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Brian. That was great. So we've got about 11 minutes to entertain questions. You'll notice at the right-hand side of your video portion, there is a little ask a question box. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and shoot them to us. And in the last 2 minutes, I'll just run over a couple of places you can go, resources to help you raise awareness. So let's see if we have any questions here. Joy, you're going to have to help me out here if they come in on your side and we can't see them. None yet. So what I'll do while you're actually looking or getting your questions ready, I'm just going to go over some websites we've set up. First of all, the Ratanak Ride for Refuge information site, which we put up this year. This used to be PowerPoint presentations. We've now committed this to the web, so we have a whole bunch of information on the cycle of poverty, vulnerability, and exploitation that we're trying to break, which is the theme of our ride this year. There's a lot of information on how to sign up in Canada and the US, and you can go look at cycles of injustice. You can find out how to ride with us, the fundraising tools, hints. We also have links to the Ride for Refuge website for their links. Ride for Refuge.org is actually our Ratanak site, and let me just cycle through those. So that's one. The second one we've set up is really neat. We've got a community on Google Plus for Ratanak Ride for Refuge, so you can put your comments up here, post your pictures of you practicing. An excellent site to keep current of information is our Facebook site. If you're looking for in-depth information, our Ratanak organization, www.ratanak.org, is an excellent site with stories about the projects, how to get involved, news, and so on. And lastly, to keep up to date in terms of how we're doing, you go to our Ride for Refuge Partners/Ratanak site. It'll give you how many teams, locations we have. This is a Canadian site. If you're looking for examples of what people have on their team pages or their individual rider sites, you can click in over here. And if you're trying to get a hold of me on the contact, this is how you email me, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can, usually within 12 hours. So that's some of the resources you can avail yourself to.
Are there questions coming in, or can I jump back in?
No questions.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Let me jump back in. Hi, everybody. I want to say one more thing, because there's so much going on in Cambodia I want to communicate. Sorry, everybody, I was muted there. So what I wanted to talk to you about was these little cards. They're very, very simple, and they're cards that this program has been funded in the past by Ride for Refuge in previous years, and has had a huge impact. These are handed out to children and vulnerable young people. They have the numbers on the back, emergency numbers to call, and kids and young people are trained to not only receive the cards and keep the cards with them, but also memorize the phone numbers on them so that they can call even if they're abducted or trafficked, and then they can call. Now, if you just have the card, the trafficker can take the card away from you, but if you've memorized the numbers, then you'll be in a position to contact a 24/7 number. Thousands of these have been distributed, hundreds of thousands have been distributed, and currently I think it's 60 calls a month are coming in. There's 40 a month currently coming in from China, believe it or not, of young women being trafficked to China. We've had calls on this from as far away as South Africa. Young people, young Cambodians trafficked to South Africa, put on fish boats in forced slave labor. And so there's a whole process of getting them back and repatriated where they're safe, because they just disappear. And so this is a very, very exciting program, and this is the kind of thing that Ride for Refuge pours its money into. And this little card, simple though it is, absolutely translates into completely changed lives. Lives that are sold into slavery, whether it's labor slavery in brick factories, in fish processing plants, on fish boats, or into brothels. It's all immaterial. It's slavery. And so we have the opportunity to recover these lives, both domestically, there's plenty of phone calls, and also internationally. So thank you for partnering with us in that. And I just hope in these kind of circumstances you have a sense of participating in something really wonderful and really exciting. It's, as I've said numerous times, it's grassroots. It's very real, and it comes with a combination of, I think, good charity admin, as well as an understanding of child protection and law enforcement, which is a wonderful combination that the third world and the developing world definitely needs. So, are there any questions that are coming in? No? Okay. So if you want to follow up via email, you can do. Paul, do you have anything else to finish off with?
No, just to thank Joy and Kara for the excellent help. And there we go. I just wanted to thank Joy and Kara for their excellent help in coordinating this and for helping us with the communications. Again, if you have any questions at all, any concerns, any difficulties, please contact us right away. ride@ratanak.org is the email address. Ryan, thank you very much for sharing with us, and we hope that we will see a lot of people registering in the next couple of days and joining with us and the larger family, both in Canada and the US, as we seek to ride and continue the work God is doing in Cambodia. Thank you. Good night.